Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to close your eyes for a second.
Okay.
Imagine you're walking down a hallway. The carpet is, that pattern beige, maybe a little bit damp from a recent shampoo.
Oh, I know that smell.
Right. The walls are a neutral cream color. You get to a door, you slide in a plastic key card, the little light flashes green, and you walk in. What do you see?
I see a bed with those crisp white linens tucked in so tight you could bounce a quarter off them.
Yes.
I see a desk with a laminated menu for room service and a small bathroom with those tiny, tiny little bottles of shampoo that smell vaguely of cucumber.
Exactly. You are in a hotel. And whether you're in Tokyo or Toledo or Toronto, that experience is almost, well, it's aggressively standardized. You know exactly what you're getting.
And it's safe. It's predictable.
And for a century, that was the gold standard of travel. Predictability was the product.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't want surprises when you were 3,000 miles from home.
But then something shifted. We decided that predictable was, I don't know, maybe a little boring. A lot boring.
And we started grabbing our passports, packing our bags, and collectively deciding that, you know what? We wanted to sleep in a stranger's house instead.
It sounds so weird when you put it like that.
It is weird. So today, we're not just talking about booking a room. We are looking at a full-blown travel revolution.
It really is a revolution. And I know the moment we say the words vacation rental, everyone listening probably pictures a specific colorful app icon on their phone.
Sure.
Or maybe they're remembering a weekend trip to a cabin last summer. But what we found in the research for this deep dive is that the app is just the shiny surface.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. Underneath, there's this massive machinery that is reshaping real estate, hospitality, and even, the social fabric of our neighborhoods.
We're talking about a fundamental shift away from that industrial hotel model to everything else.
Okay.
And the sheer scale of everything else is what blew my mind.
It's enormous.
We're going to be talking about everything from, like, a budget studio apartment where the bed is practically in the kitchen.
I've stayed in that one.
All the way to campervans and then up to luxury villas that come with their own private staff.
It's a massive, fragmented marketplace. And because it's so big, we kind of need to start by defining our terms.
Okay.
Because depending on where you're listening from, you might not even use the phrase vacation rental.
Right. In the U.S., that's the standard term. But the source material highlights that this is a global phenomenon, and the language, it changes when you cross borders.
For sure. If you're in the UK, for example, you wouldn't say vacation rental. It sounds a bit clunky, a bit American.
So what would you say?
You'd be looking for a holiday let or a holiday home.
A holiday let. Okay.
It's the same concept. You're paying for temporary access to a private dwelling, but the cultural branding is just different.
And then there's my personal favorite, which comes from France.
Yeah.
The gite.
The gite. G-I-T-E.
It just sounds so much more romantic than short-term rental unit.
It really does. It has this specific connotation, right? It usually refers to a furnished holiday home, typically in a rural district.
You're picturing stone walls, rustic charm.
Maybe a vineyard nearby.
Right.
But whether it's a sheet in Provence, a holiday let in Cornwall, or a condo in Florida, the core mechanism is the same. It's the monetization of private property for leisure.
And I think that's a really important point to flag right at the top. We often think of this as a purely modern thing, something driven by Silicon Valley tech companies in the last 15 years.
Right, like it was invented in 2008.
Yeah. But the research points out that this has been a popular travel option in Europe and Canada for a long, long time.
Absolutely. The tech platforms might be new, but the behavior is old. People have been renting cottages by the lake or villas in Tuscany for decades.
But how did they do it?
It used to happen through, classified ads in the back of magazines or through local travel agents.
That's so analog.
Totally. What the tech companies did was digitize it, speed it up, and then scale it to the moon.
So here's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to look under the hood of this industry. We aren't just going to talk about how to book a cool house.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the economics. We're talking about a $100 billion industry here. We're going to look at the risks because, yes, there are scams, and they are terrifying.
They really are.
We're going to look at the impact on our neighborhoods. And finally, the really complex regulations that cities are inventing to try and control this beast.
It's a collision of economics, sociology, and urban planning, all in one.
So let's start with segment 1, the product. What exactly are we renting? Because unlike a hotel chain where consistency is the goal, here, inconsistency seems to be the feature.
Inconsistent is the polite word for it. Broad is another. Because vacation rentals usually occur in privately owned properties, you are dealing with the individual tastes, the standards, and the eccentricities of the owner.
Which is part of the charm, right? You want to feel like you're living a different life for a few days.
Precisely. You aren't just renting a bed, you're renting an aesthetic. And the spectrum is just vast. You have your standard holiday villas, apartments, cottages, condos, townhomes.
It's stuff we all know.
The structures we're all familiar with. But then the source material highlights some really niche options. For instance, farm stays.
Now, I have to ask, does a farm stay mean I have to wake up at 4 a.m. to milk a cow? Because that sounds less like a vacation and more like unpaid labor.
It can. It actually can. The definition encompasses both ends of that spectrum. It can involve active participation on a working farm where you're getting your hands dirty, collecting eggs, feeding livestock.
And people want to do that.
For some people, particularly those stuck in office jobs, that kind of tactile work is incredibly relaxing.
I can see that. Reconnecting with the land.
Yeah. But on the other hand, it can also just be a conventional rental that happens to be co-located on a farm.
Ah, okay. That's more my speed.
So you get the pastoral views, the fresh air, the sheep grazing in the distance, but you don't have to do any of the actual farming.
Well, I want the view, not the shovel.
Exactly.
But then you go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. The sources mention campervan and motorhome rentals are technically part of this market.
Right. It meets the definition. I mean, it's accommodation, it's temporary, and it's for tourists.
It just happens to be on wheels.
It just happens to be on wheels. And it speaks to that desire for freedom, that really drives this whole industry.
But let's talk about the high end, because I think when people dream of vacation rentals, they aren't dreaming of a camper van. They are dreaming of the lavish.
The luxury segment of this market is fascinating because it's where the rental market starts to loop back around and become a hotel again.
How so?
We're talking about private villas in the world's most desirable locations. St. Bart's, Lake Como, Aspen.
Okay, so big money places.
Big money. And for the price tag on these places, which can be thousands of dollars a night, I assume you weren't just getting a key code and a map to the nearest grocery store.
I would hope not.
Far from it. These properties are effectively private hotels. They come fully staffed.
What does that mean? Fully staffed?
We're talking private chefs who cook every meal, boat captains for excursions, daily cleaning crews, on-site concierges.
Wow.
Some even offer things like cooking lessons or yoga instructors that come right to the house.
So in that scenario, the line between renting a house and staying at a 5-star resort it's pretty much gone.
And that line is blurring everywhere, not just at the ultra-luxury level. One of the key trends the source material highlights is the rise of what they call the professionally managed resort condominium complex.
That is a mouthful of a term.
It is.
What does that actually look like on the ground?
Okay, think of it as a hybrid. Imagine a large building in a beach town. The units inside are condos. They're individually owned. They have full kitchens, living rooms, separate bedrooms.
Oh, an apartment.
Basically. But the building itself operates like a hotel. You walk into a lobby with a front desk. You check in with a human being. There's 24-hour maintenance on site.
So I get the space of an apartment. I can cook breakfast. I can spread out. But if the toilet breaks at midnight, someone actually comes to fix it.
Exactly. And that appeals to a huge segment of travelers who want the space and the kitchen, but they don't want the risk or the hassle of a by-owner rental where you might be on your own if something goes wrong.
You don't have to call Dave in another time zone to ask where the plunger is.
Right. And the source notes that many traditional hospitality resorts are now pivoting to this model, taking their inventory and renting it out this way.
It's so interesting how the industry is evolving to meet that demand for consistency. We want the cool factor of a rental, but we still crave the safety net of a hotel.
We want it all.
We want it all. But let's shift gears to the money, segment 2, the business of booking. Because you mentioned earlier, this is a $100 billion market. That is a staggering amount of money changing hands.
It is huge. That figure comes from an estimate by Evercore. But here's a statistic that really blew my mind. I think it challenges the narrative we often hear.
Okay.
2/3 of that market is for rent by owner.
2/3. So, wait. Despite all the big corporate players we hear about, the majority of this money is still flowing to individual people renting out their places.
That's right. It is a highly fragmented market at the owner level. It's millions of individuals interacting with millions of travelers. However,
There's a however.
The platforms that facilitate those transactions, the middlemen, are consolidating rapidly.
Right, the big tech of travel. We have to talk about the evolution of these platforms. It feels like there used to be dozens of little websites, and now there are just a few giants.
That's exactly what happened. The industry has seen massive consolidation. A pivotal moment mentioned in the research was back in November 2015.
What happened in November 2015?
Expedia, which we all know as a travel giant for flights and hotels, bought HomeAway.
I remember HomeAway.
And the purchase price was $3.9 billion.
$3.9 billion. Wow. That is a serious bet on the future of vacation rentals.
It was a huge strategic move to compete directly with Airbnb. And HomeAway wasn't just one site, it was a conglomerate that already owned Vrbo and several other brands.
So they bought a whole portfolio.
Exactly. And eventually they took that whole cluster and rebranded it under the single name Vrbo.
Which is funny because for years I pronounced it VRBO, letter by letter.
Everyone did.
And then suddenly the commercial started saying Vrbo, and I felt like I had been doing it wrong my whole life.
Branding is a powerful thing, but they aren't the only ones, of course. You have TripAdvisor, Booking.com, Tripping.com, Canada Stays. And while they all look kind of similar to the user,
Right, a search bar and a map.
the plumbing behind the scenes, the booking models, are actually different.
Okay, let's break that down because I think for the average listener, you just click search, find a house, and pay. But how the money moves and who is responsible for what, that varies.
It really does. There are really three main models, plus a search layer on top.
Okay.
First, you have the direct model.
This is the old school way, right?
Yeah, very old school. This is finding an owner's personal website. Maybe you saw a flyer on a bulletin board in a coffee shop, or a friend recommended Judy's Lake House.
So you go to her site, you email Judy.
You might even send a check in the mail. It's very high touch, very personal.
And probably a bit riskier, which we will get to later.
Definitely. Then you have the second model, the listing services. This is what many of the big sites started as.
How does that work?
The homeowner pays a fee to the website to upload their photos and information. The website is essentially a digital bulletin board.
The giant classified section.
Exactly. So when you, the guest, want to book, the site connects you to the owner, but you deal with the owner directly to arrange the payment and contracts.
So the website is just the matchmaker. They aren't handling the money?
Not always, no. And crucially, the policies vary wildly.
Why is that?
Because you're dealing with the owner. The cancellation policy, the key pickup instructions, the security deposit, it's all up to that individual person.
And that explains the inconsistency. It's why one rental has a strict no refunds ever policy, and the one next door is canceled 24 hours before.
That's the one. But then you have the third model, which is becoming more dominant. Agencies.
How is an agency different from a listing service? They sound similar.
The key difference is the middleman. With an agency, there's usually no direct contact with the owner. The agency handles everything.
What's everything?
The billing, the reservations, the vetting of the property, and often the key exchange. It's a layer of professional management between you and the homeowner.
And presumably that comes with a cost. You pay for that professionalism.
You do. The fees or commissions charged by agencies are generally higher, so the rent tends to be higher for the traveler.
And then you mentioned a search layer.
Yes. The last piece is meta-search. Sites like Tripping.com, they are a search of searches.
Right.
They aggregate listings from all these different companies, listing sites, agencies, big platforms like Vrbo, into one single experience.
So you aren't checking 5 different websites. You check one, and it shows you everything.
That's the idea. It's about convenience.
That's helpful. But let's talk about the fees, because this is the #1 complaint I hear from friends. You see a price listed as, say, $100 a night, but by the time you go to checkout, it's $200 a night. Where is all that extra money going?
Well, a significant chunk of it is going to what are called management companies.
Right. But why?
Yeah.
Why can't the owners just manage it themselves and keep the costs down?
Think about the logistics. Most owners don't live next door to their vacation rental. If they live in Chicago and the rental is in Phoenix,
They can't just pop over?
they can't just pop over to unclog a toilet or wash the sheets between guests, so they hire local pros to do it for them.
And these pros, I'm guessing, are not cheap.
No. The source indicates that management companies typically work on a commission model. They take anywhere from 20% to 50% of the total revenue.
50%, that is half the income, just gone for management.
It sounds incredibly high, but think about everything they do. They handle housekeeping, property maintenance, marketing, reservations, those emergency calls at 3 a.m. It's a lot of work.
And they're taking on some of the risk then.
Well, in the commission model, they don't guarantee income. They just take a cut of whatever comes in.
So if the place sits empty for a month, the owner gets zero and the manager gets zero.
Correct. The risk is shared, but it primarily sits with the owner who still has to pay the mortgage and taxes every month.
Okay.
However, there is an alternative arrangement mentioned in the text that completely flips this risk profile. It's called the guaranteed model.
A guaranteed model, how does that work?
In this scenario, the rental manager actually buys all the available weeks from the homeowner up front. They might say, look, I will pay you $30,000 for the year, guaranteed.
Oh, wow. So the owner just gets a check, regardless of whether anyone ever stays there.
Exactly. The owner gets guaranteed income and total peace of mind.
What's the catch for the owner?
The catch is they give up all the upside. The manager takes on the full risk. If they can't rent it, they lose money. But if they rent it out for a premium, say they make $50,000, they keep all that profit. The owner doesn't see another dime.
That is fascinating. It turns the manager into almost a tenant who then sublets the place to tourists.
It does.
It just shows how financialized this industry has become. It's not just letting someone stay in your spare room. It's complex yield management and risk assessment.
It is high finance disguised as hospitality.
Speaking of complex financial arrangements, we need to clear up a major point of confusion for a lot of people. Segment 3, vacation rentals versus timeshares.
Ah, yes. The classic mix-up. And it's completely understandable because they can look identical from the outside. You're staying in a nice condo in a resort area. There's a pool. There are families everywhere.
So let's just ask it directly. Is a vacation rental just a timeshare by another name?
No. The legal difference is ownership. A timeshare is a piece of real estate or right to use for a specific segment of time, often 1 week a year, every year. You are an owner, or at least a partial owner. You have a deed or a contract.
Whereas a vacation rental is purely transactional. I pay, I stay, I leave. I own absolutely nothing.
Correct. It is purely temporary access, no ownership stake at all.
But I feel like there's a but coming. This is never that simple.
There is always a but. The lines are blurring here, too. The interesting thing is that timeshares often become vacation rentals.
How so? How does that happen?
Okay, imagine 2 scenarios. Scenario A. You own a timeshare week in Orlando. You own week 27 every July. But this year, you can't go. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you're sick.
You don't want to just lose it.
Right. You're still paying your annual maintenance fees. So instead of letting it sit empty and wasting your money, you put it on a rental program.
So I, the traveler, go onto a website and book a vacation rental, but I'm actually staying in your timeshare week.
Exactly. To you, it's just a rental. To the system, it's a timeshare being utilized.
That makes sense.
And then there's scenario B, which is even bigger. And this is unsold resort inventory.
This is the stuff that developers haven't been able to sell to timeshare buyers, like in the first scenario.
Right. The source notes that resorts control about 21% of the total inventory. These are unsold units just sitting on the books.
A fifth of all units.
Yeah. And developers do not want those assets sitting there doing nothing, generating zero revenue. So what do?
They rent them out.
They rent them out as vacation rentals to the general public.
That is a huge chunk of the market.
It is massive. In 2014, so a few years ago, but it shows the scale, the business of renting out these unsold timeshare rents was worth $1.9 billion.
Wow.
So when you book that nice 2-bedroom condo with the lazy river pool, there's a pretty good chance, maybe 1 in 5, that you're sleeping in a timeshare unit that nobody ever bought.
It's amazing how these industries feed into each other. But let's talk about when things go wrong.
Yeah.
Because for every dream vacation, there is a horror story. Segment 4, the risks.
And we have some industry jargon for this, which I love. SNAD.
SNAD. SNAD. It sounds like a bad cold. What does that stand for?
It stands for significantly not as described.
Ooh. That sounds legal and ominous.
It is the bane of the traveler's existence.
Yeah.
It refers to that scenario where the photos online look like absolute paradise.
Professional photographer, wide-angle lens, perfect lighting.
Sparkling pool, stunning ocean view, marble countertops. But when you arrive...
The pool is green and full of algae. The ocean view is visible only if you stand on a chair and lean out the bathroom window, and the roof is leaking.
Exactly. The reality does not match the marketing. That's SNAD.
So how do we fight SNAD? What's the defense?
The primary defense mechanism that the platforms have introduced is, of course, user reviews.
The wisdom of the crowd.
The idea is that the crowd will expose these misleading listings. If 10 people say the roof leaks and the pool is a swamp, you don't book it. It creates a self-policing system.
But that relies on there being previous guests. If you're the first one to book a new listing, you're the guinea pig.
You are the guinea pig. That's the risk. But honestly, SNAD is the better of the bad outcomes.
What do you mean? How is a leaky roof a good outcome?
At least you have a roof, even if it leaks.
What's the worst outcome?
The ghost rental scam. This is malicious fraud. This isn't just exaggerated photos. This is pure theft.
Okay, how does this work? I want to walk through this so our listeners know what to look out for.
Okay, picture this. A scammer goes onto a real estate website like Zillow or Redfin and finds a legitimate listing for a beautiful house that is for sale. They download all the high-resolution photos.
Okay, so they have pictures of a real nice house.
Then they create a fake account on a vacation rental site or, more commonly, a less regulated classified site like Craigslist. They upload the photos and advertise it as a vacation rental at a great price.
Maybe a little too good of a price.
That's the hook. And you, the unsuspecting traveler looking for a deal, you find it. You're thrilled.
You book it.
The owner asks you to wire money or pay via a method that's hard to reverse, usually months in advance, to secure your spot. You pay, you're excited, you book your flights.
And then I show up with my suitcase.
And the rental doesn't exist, or worse, the house exists, but real people live there. Maybe the new owners who just bought it, and they have absolutely no idea who you are or why you're on their doorstep.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
The owner you paid has vanished with your money. The email account is deleted, the phone number is disconnected.
That is awful, especially because you're usually in a foreign place, maybe don't speak the language, you're tired from travel, and now you have literally nowhere to stay.
It's devastating. And because the payment happens so far in advance, the trail is often cold by the time the victim even realizes what happened.
Is there a safer way? The source material mentions a model used in the UK that seems a bit more secure against this kind of total fraud.
Yes, the package deal model. In the UK and other parts of Europe, major tour operators often sell villa holidays.
That's a villa holiday.
It's not just renting a house. It's a full package that includes your flights, your rental car, and the home, all bundled together.
Ah, so you're buying it from a big, established company.
Exactly. So if the house turns out not to exist, the tour operator is on the hook. You have a single corporate point of accountability. They are legally required to find you alternative accommodation. It's much, much safer.
What's the catch? Why don't we all do that? It sounds way better.
The trade-off is choice. In the DIY model, you can spend hours picking the specific quirky cottage with the blue door and the weird art on the wall.
You choose the exact property.
Yes. In the package model, you often just select a generic type like 3-bedroom villa with pool in this region. You don't necessarily get to choose the specific property. You get what they assign you from their inventory.
So it's safety versus specificity.
That is the eternal struggle of travel planning, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, we talked about the traveler. Now I want to zoom out. Because this industry doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It happens on our streets, in our neighborhoods. Segment 5, the societal impact.
This is where the debate gets really, really heated. There's a strong economic argument for vacation rentals and an equally strong community argument against them.
Let's start with the good news. Let's start with the money.
The key concept here from the pro-rental side is the multiplier effect.
The multiplier effect. Okay, how does that work in this context?
Well, the data suggests that vacation rentals often lead to longer stays than hotels.
Right. If you're crammed in a hotel room with your kids, you might stay 3 days before you go crazy.
But if you have a whole house with a kitchen and a backyard, you might stay a week, maybe even 2.
And longer stays obviously mean more spending.
Exactly. But it's where you spend it that's key. You aren't just eating at the hotel restaurant and drinking at the hotel bar.
No, you're going to the supermarket.
You're buying groceries at the local supermarket. You're going to the neighborhood coffee shop in the morning. You're renting bikes from the local shop down the street.
So the money gets spread out more.
That increased visitor spending flows directly into the community, supporting wages and employment in areas that might not normally see those tourist dollars.
So local businesses potentially win. But what about the neighbors, the people who actually live there full time?
That is the disruption argument, and it is a very, very real friction. When you introduce transient visitors into unfamiliar neighborhoods, things happen.
Like the party house next door.
Loud parties after quiet hours are the #1 complaint, absolutely. But it's also subtler things.
Like what?
It's taking up all the residential parking spots on a crowded street, or just disregarding unspoken neighborhood cultural guidelines like putting the trash out on the wrong day or making a lot of noise with rolling suitcases early on a Sunday morning.
Right. They are on vacation mode, and the neighbors are on, I have to get up for work on Monday mode. That clash is inevitable.
It is, but the biggest accusation thrown at vacation rentals isn't about noise or parking. It's about housing.
The housing crisis connection. This is the heavy question. Do vacation rentals make housing unaffordable for local residents?
The general consensus from most economists and housing advocates is yes, they can negatively affect the long-term housing market.
How exactly? What's the mechanism?
It's a pretty straightforward supply and demand issue. If a landlord can make 3 times as much money renting their property to tourists by the night as they can renting to a local family for a year.
They're going to rent to tourists.
Many will, yes.
Hmm?
That action removes a unit of housing from the long-term market.
And when you have less supply for locals, the prices for the remaining units go up for everyone.
Generally, yes. But, and this is a crucial nuance that our research uncovered, a Harvard Business Review study points out a very specific exception to this.
I love a good exception. Let's hear it.
The exception is owner-occupiers.
Okay, what's an owner-occupier?
This is the person renting out their spare room while they're living there, or the person who rents out their whole house only while they are away on their own vacation.
So it's their primary residence.
It's their primary residence. Their research suggests that this type of activity does not affect the long-term rental market.
That makes sense. Because that house was never going to be available for a long-term tenant anyway. The owner lives there.
Exactly. It isn't removing stock from the market. It's just utilizing spare capacity that was already there.
So the grandma renting her spare room isn't the villain here.
No, it's the permanent investors, the people or corporations buying up homes solely to turn them into full-time, year-round hotels that move the needle on housing affordability.
That distinction is so important. And that leads us perfectly into our final section, segment 6, the crackdown. Because cities aren't just watching this happen anymore. They are fighting back.
They are. The pushback is coming from 2 main directions. First, from residents complaining about the noise and the housing costs, but also from competing lodging businesses, the hotels.
Who are saying what?
They're saying, hey, we pay commercial property taxes, we follow strict fire codes, we have to have tons of insurance. Why don't they? It's an issue of a level playing field.
It's a fair point. So let's look at some case studies in regulation. What are cities actually doing to control this?
It varies wildly. New York City and Chicago have introduced some very strict restrictions, though the source material notes that enforcement is not always strictly enforced.
Why not?
It's a game of whack-a-mole. It's incredibly difficult to police thousands and thousands of private apartments.
I've heard about Portland, Oregon having some interesting rules.
Portland is a fascinating case of what you could call a de facto ban through regulation.
What does that mean, a de facto ban?
It means they didn't pass a law saying vacation rentals are illegal. Instead, they made a rule that says you generally cannot have rentals of less than 30 days in residential zones.
30 days. But who goes on vacation for 30 days?
Very, very few people. The source material quotes local managers like Vacasa who say the average guest only stays for 3 to 10 nights.
So by setting the minimum at 30 days, Portland effectively outlawed the standard vacation rental business model in those areas without ever banning it by name.
It's a very clever and very effective piece of regulation.
But the most detailed example in our source material is San Diego. They have taken a very structured, very mathematical approach to this.
They have. It's a really interesting model.
So what is the San Diego plan?
Starting in 2022, they put a hard cap on the number of properties that can be used as short-term rentals. They capped it at 1% of the city's total housing stock.
1%. That is a very specific and pretty small number.
It is. It creates a finite license system. If you want to run a rental, you need one of these licenses, and there are only so many to go around. Once they're gone, you go on a waiting list.
And did they include that owner-occupier nuance we were just talking about from the Harvard study?
They did, and this is what makes it feel like smart policy making. The restriction and the 1% cap only apply to homes where the owner is not a permanent resident, so the investor properties.
And what about the people renting a spare room?
Shared rooms where the owner lives on site, they are totally exempt. They are not part of the cap. You don't need one of the rare licenses for that.
So they're specifically targeting the investors who take housing off the market while protecting the casual hosts who are just making some extra money.
Precisely. And they did one more thing. They leveled the playing field on taxes. San Diego now requires rentals to pay a transient occupancy tax.
Which is what hotels have to pay.
Yes. It's a hotel tax. It helps pay for city services that tourists use, trash collection, water, police, public services. It treats the rental like the small business it is rather than just a house.
It seems like they're trying to bring some order to the chaos.
That's exactly the language they used. The San Diego Council President, Jennifer Campbell, had a great quote about this. She said, "The pre-regulation era was an unregulated market that has vexed our city."
Vexed.
She framed these new laws as a way to finally close the chapter on that chaos.
Vexed our city. You don't hear the word vexed enough in city council meetings.
I love that. It perfectly captures the frustration, though, doesn't it? It implies this problem that has just been nagging and unsolvable for years and years.
It really does. So let's bring this all home. Or, I guess, back to the rental. We have gone from the humble beginnings of a spare room in a cottage to a $100 billion global industry.
We've seen how it is reshaping real estate, changing how we travel, creating entirely new risks for travelers, and forcing cities to completely rewrite their laws just to keep up.
It's not just a place to sleep anymore. It's a major economic and social force.
And if we connect all these dots and look at the bigger picture, it raises a really interesting, kind of provocative question about the future of home.
What's that?
Well, think about the convergence we've been talking about this whole time. We are seeing hotels trying to act more like homes, building out suites and condo-style units with kitchens and living rooms.
Right. The residence inn model.
And at the same time, we're seeing homes trying to act more like hotels, offering concierges, daily cleaning staff, and standardized, predictable amenities.
Everything is meeting in the middle.
Exactly. So are we heading toward a future where the distinction between living somewhere and staying somewhere completely disappears?
What do you mean?
Are we all just going to be transient occupants in a world of professionally managed serviced apartments, whether we're there for 3 nights or 3 years? Is the very concept of a long-term, stable home changing?
That is a thought to mull over while you're browsing listings for your next trip.
It is.
Just remember to check the reviews for leaky roofs before you book.
Always, always check the reviews.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.